Hey, I'm Paul Rabil. And this time I'm sitting down with a 3-time Pro Bowler. He's an ESPN analyst and the first NFL player on Twitter. Matt Hasselbeck has been using his voice on the field, online, and on air to develop his brand and make a difference. In this episode, you're going to learn about free agency negotiations in the NFL. Also, what cost Matt his Campbell's Soup sponsorship deal. I hope you enjoy as I sit down with Matt in Boston. Yes, it's our second show, and I'm pleased to say that we have our first advertiser. And being in line with sports and business, it's around building your team. So with that, I'd like to ask the first question. Are you hiring? And if so, do you know where to post your job to find the best candidates? Me personally, it took 6 months to hire my first employee. Shout out Andrew Manning. There was a real opportunity cost that I missed had I been able to move and execute more quickly, though. And as they say in sports, there's no I in team, and you're only as good as the talent on your roster. With ZipRecruiter, you can post your job to 100-plus job sites with just one click. Then, their powerful technology efficiently matches the right people to your job better than anyone else. That's why ZipRecruiter is different. Unlike other job sites, ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on candidates finding you. It finds them. In fact, over 80% of jobs posted on ZipRecruiter get a qualified candidate in just 24 hours. That means no juggling emails or calls to your office. All you do is simply screen, rate, then manage candidates all in one place with ZipRecruiter's easy-to-use dashboard. Find out why ZipRecruiter has been used by businesses of all sizes to find the most qualified job candidates with immediate results. And right now, my listeners, for Suiting Up Podcast, can post jobs on ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free. Go to ZipRecruiter.com/cross. That's short for lacrosse. And that's ZipRecruiter.com/CROSSE. One more time for everyone, it's free. ZipRecruiter.com/cross.
I'm looking for your name here because I'm going to make a joke about something.
Well, this is a great opportunity to
now, is
start
Tyler
off with a joke. You can start off with a joke
Tyler
right
here?
now.
Like, can I acknowledge that Tyler's here?
Yeah, yeah. Tyler's right here.
I have no mic, though.
Tyler did the research.
Yeah.
All right, so this is your opportunity right now. 10 words or fewer to describe yourself.
You know, it's funny. I'm working on this. I'm going to see Don Miller to help me develop who I am. What's my story?
Yeah?
Going to see him in Nashville. My wife set this up.
That's great.
Yeah. I was supposed to go in October.
Like self-actualization.
It's a little bit more like, you're going to go speak to a group and then they leave. Like, what's the one thing they're going to say? Like, who is that guy? Who is Paul Rabil?
Yeah.
And it's like, whatever that is, kind of developing what your story. I think it's called story brand.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of fired up to do it, actually.
So what do you think that is for you?
That's a great question. I kind of feel like I've got this, depends where I am in the country. If I'm anywhere near Green Bay, Wisconsin, I guarantee you someone's going to be like, oh, you're the guy at overtime said to Brett Favre, we want the ball, we're going to score, In Seattle, where I played for 10 years, it's something completely different. Right. In Indianapolis, where I finished my career, it's very different. If I'm at school picking up my kids, I'm strictly, oh, you're Annabelle's dad.
Yeah.
It really depends on what sphere I'm in a little bit. But so that's something I got to work on now that I'm done playing football.
But forget about the people, what they think about you. What do you want to leave as your legacy? Like and forget about that.
Ooh,
what's
we're going deep here. Going deep here,
Paul. What's the most meaningful thing to you, right?
Parenting. Yeah. Who I am as a husband, father, and a parent. That's most important.
It changes your life.
Yeah. I remember when I was my first year starting as a quarterback in Seattle, and we had an in-season baby, which I highly discourage any young quarterback in your first year as starter to plan a pregnancy that way. We didn't have a plan, so bam, we had a baby in October, and ironically lived next door to a fire station. And anyway, point of the story was we had the baby on a Tuesday, which is the NFL off day, and then they were like,
that worked.
Yeah, sort of. Then the next day they were like, okay, you guys can go home. I was like, we can't go home. Like, we don't know what to do with this baby. Our closest relative was in Chicago. We're in Seattle, and just had no idea. And so someone said, oh, it's like the Peace Corps. It's the toughest job you'll ever love. And I thought that was a pretty good description of what parenthood is like. It is harder than anything you've ever done, but if you're going to try to do it well, and yet it's the most rewarding thing by far.
Yeah. Yeah, we talked earlier, and I lobbed you this question ahead of time because I had a feeling there was going to be like some technological barrier between the two of us. But the other way to pose the question that we like to do on the show is your home screen on your phone.
Oh, yeah. I forgot to. Well, you know what's interesting?
So you didn't take advantage of the pro tip, which is
No.
good.
Well, you know what? I just got a new phone because my phone just like, who knows what happened to it. But I had all the boxes. Everything was like organized by category. I don't even know if I have any apps on
So
this
that's
phone.
good.
It's like...
so you were categorized, and
I don't even have all the icons on page one. They're not even all filled in.
Okay, so we'll just read page one for me. Read your home
So
screen.
you just got your standards, photos, camera, weather, Uber.
There you go.
Definitely have the clock.
Why? I thought you were driving the kids around from practice to practice.
Well, there was a little bit of an accident in our garage. I don't want to sell anybody out because I don't want my wife to get mad at me, but there was an accident. The car is being fixed, and I Ubered here, and I will be Ubering home.
Yeah. What about social media? Do you have social media on there?
I do. I have Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, Score Sports. You probably don't know about SQOR.
I absolutely know about Score.
Yeah, you do actually. I learned about that from Brett Favre, an old teammate of mine. Friendlier than say Twitter. Like Twitter, every NFL guy when you get on the bus after a game, you fight this temptation. Do I look at my mentions on Twitter post game?
Assuming that's after a loss.
Doesn't matter.
Because after a win, you're like,
doesn't matter.
Shit.
No, I've been NFC Player of the Week and you
don't look at your mentions,
but played poorly. Played poorly in the first quarter, and it's like.
Oh, it's nuts.
You're terrible. Take 2 weeks off and quit. All that. And then way worse, actually. And then by the end of it, it's like, you're the man. Love you. Same person, usually. But so anyway, Score's a little friendlier. It's like for people that are actually...
It's the avid fan platform.
Actually like a fan. They're like rooting for you and your team. And even whether or not they even want to interact with you, they love seeing you interact with other players, opponents, teammates, sports, whatever. So I like that. It's new, so it's still working out some kinks, but that's new.
Are you just participating, or did you invest, or are you advising?
Maybe ambassador, I would say. I was kind of a fan of it, of the idea.
Yeah.
So
I've noticed, is disclosure, we're at the Harvard Innovations Lab for a conference, and everyone here is like trying to pull you in one direction or another to probably ambassador their platform.
Yes.
And you get a lot of that.
Yeah. So you just try to pick the things that you're actually passionate about.
Right.
And also the people that you, like I was with some guys yesterday. I thought they had a great idea. I love their concept. I would buy their concept in a store or on an app or whatever. And I didn't necessarily like them.
You didn't like the founders?
Absolutely. I didn't trust them. They were a little slick willy sleazy. And I just overselling, over-promising. All right.
It's called founder fit.
It's a great idea, but it's you're not curing some disease here, guys. You're making.
Well, even to the extent that
say what they're making, but
even to the extent that founders are creating a cure for a disease in the biotech space, if they're not empathic people that can relate, it turns off investors. You have to find founder fit early and often.
Yeah. In fact, it's funny you say that. Last year, my son's hockey coach had to miss a bunch of time. He was working on a drug to fight the Ebola virus. Mm-hmm. And this guy was an awesome guy, awesome coach. And he really, really cared about helping people.
Yeah.
It was inspiring to hear. This wasn't just his job. He was thinking about the, incredible amounts of people that he could actually help, as opposed to, you see movies, you hear a doctor doing surgery and he's just talking about his golf game as he's cutting a guy. This is his career's on the line. He's coming. And maybe it is routine to him, but it also, you want it to feel hey, is this important to you like it is to me?
No doubt.
It's a real thing.
So staying with social media then, but talking about using it in a meaningful way, you have been known to leverage the time around your birthday to gather donations and contribute to a charity of your choice. Are you using social platforms for that? Had you, or is it mainly like a circle of family and friends?
Yeah, I think that was probably something that I was passionate about. I think I was the first NFL player on Twitter. I can't confirm that. I think January of 2008,
Dude,
if that's
Tyler,
true.
we didn't get that stat.
You know? Come on, Tyler. You're slacking, buddy.
Incredible.
That's incredible. Well, he's got at Hasselbeck.
Which is pretty cool.
Which is cool. I was going to ask
I
if
did
that...
it sort of wrong though, because I started out super private on Twitter and super public on Facebook, and then I hit the max amount of friends on Facebook, 5,002.
Yep. Know that story.
And then it was like
before they created fan pages.
Yeah, exactly. So
and then you probably had like 10,000 pending friend requests.
I did it. Well, I ended up deactivating. A long story, but I got hacked, and But I actually went to the NFL in 2008, and I said, hey, I got this great idea for our brand, for our game. It's a new revenue stream. Maybe we can solve some of these problems we have with former players and whatever. I don't know. It's called Twitter. And they were like, well, wait, what? Well, maybe we'll get our IT department down here. And it was like there was no section in the organization to figure out, well, where would Twitter fit with us?
Right.
And I sort of went that whole off season, went around like, guys, Twitter.
Yeah.
And everyone kind of laughed at me. So then, but now, now it's
so I take it that's your platform of choice?
It was. I don't know if I'm married to it though. It's become like a little bit of a, I don't know, like it's just like hateful.
They're under a lot of
kind
heat.
of a newspaper. I do know when I went to Nashville though, I went from Seattle to Nashville, and it was like, that's kind of like as far south as I've ever been. And, there was a strong accent there compared to what I was used to. And people were like, Hasselbeck, come here, man. Come here.
Yeah.
Sign my picture. Hey, dude, I follow you on Twitter. And I'm like, what? I'm sorry. What are you saying?
Yeah.
Follow you on Twitter.
Well, it's like Coach Belichick still says
Twitter.
Insta-snap. And
He does it on purpose. He's amazing. That guy's a genius, and he knows exactly what he's saying.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
So under the hood, most of us do. And I want to use that to segue into our thoughtful conversation around the duality of the modern athlete, which is why we've started this conversation with like-minded folks like yourself. And so I think the first thing that's really interesting is talking about workload and balancing what you have to do, especially with a elongated career that was as successful as yours. What was your day-to-day like training and staying at the top as one of very few high performance NFL quarterbacks?
Well, the duality you talk about, it's ironic because back when my dad played in the NFL, maybe just before that, guys had two jobs, like for real.
Yeah.
Like they would go sell insurance. Right.
That's what I'm doing.
Okay. Yeah, sort of. So, then it sort of changed. Like, hey, this is a full-time job. There is no off season. You have, I don't even know, maybe 6 weeks off. And if you have an off-season surgery, you have no weeks off. So that is a thing. I really think that to be an NFL football player, you really got to almost be 100% in. You can't kind of dabble in other stuff. It's dangerous.
If you do, then you probably fall into that bracket of a guy's career who's shorter than 1.5 years, which is the average, or 2.
Yeah, and you maybe don't take full advantage of your opportunity. And going back to 2008 when I was, trying to tell everybody about Twitter, I don't think I had the best off season I've ever had, and I got hurt my back that season and then broke a bunch of ribs. Patrick Willis hit me in San Fran on the 1 yard line with a hit that definitely should have hurt and maybe should have hurt me, but it shouldn't have fractured 2 ribs. And just looking back on my career over 18 years, I look at those 2 years when I was really trying hard to do this, sort of other ventures, almost prepare for life after football, where I feel like, that's not the strongest I was in my NFL career.
Yeah.
I was training, I was doing everything I was supposed to do, but I don't know if it wasn't my best.
Yeah.
And so looking back after that, I decided to kind of like, hey, listen, football is number one priority, and that has to come. Like that is, in terms of career, that has to be first. And if you're not getting creative and trying to find exciting new ways to train, recover, perform. I love watching what Tom Brady's doing right now, because here's a guy that's already at the top, and he is looking for he's like, you know what? I'm just throwing out everything that I've ever been told or whatever. I'm looking for what's the best way to train? What's the best way to recover? What's the best way to eat? What's the, I don't care how it's done before, how should it be done? Yeah. And you see results. And I think that's something I did try to do after that. Every off season I would, come up with a list of 3 things that I wanted to get better at. And one of those things, I always had to go outside of someone I had already known to find a way to get there.
What were some of those things?
Like late in my career, I think when I was actually in Tennessee, I had like a little bit of an Achilles tendinosis. Like basically it's like a tendonitis that lasts a long time in your Achilles. And, I was always in the cold tub. I was wearing these kinds of shoes. I was doing this and that. And, led me down a path to this guy who wrote a book called The Supple Leopard. This guy, Dr. Kelly Starrett in the Presidio area of San Francisco.
Looks like this thick.
Yeah, it's a nice coffee table book.
4 or 5 inches.
So I went to see him, and I think I might have even gone with some teammates, Andrew Luck, Kobe Fleener, some guys like that were real smart guys and into training and recovery. And maybe I went without them first, but I went there, and he's like, "Listen, there's no proof that a cold tub works."
Right.
I'm like, "Sure there is. Everyone cold tub. I mean, everyone does that." He's like, "No, there's no science." He's like, "You should try this instead." And he led me on to like some Normatec compression boots, a Compex machine or a Mark Pro machine, something like a non-fatiguing muscle stim, like pump type thing. And he said, "You see these, expensive running shoes that you're wearing? Get out of them. Throw them away. Go get some Chuck Taylors."
Yeah, we had this conversation last night. It's interesting. What promotes healing is blood flow. And our feet, your Achilles tendon, I've had Jones fractures. It's the furthest place, your foot, from your heart, which is the source of your blood flow. And on top of it, if you're going to throw it into an ice tub, you're pushing even the smallest amount of blood flow you're getting out.
So there's some benefit, I think, to the cold tub for some things, but for what I had, he basically was flipping my world upside down.
So how did you get that meeting? Did you just because
trying to think,
it's not something that it's not easy to do.
I actually think he was a guy that I had followed on Twitter.
There you go.
And maybe my dad knew this guy Rich Froning, who had won the CrossFit Games, I'd seen him in a video with him. It was just like one of these like 6 degrees of separation Kevin Bacon type situations, and I just and I think maybe he grew up in Seattle, and there was like some sort of mutual synergy to just like, hey, can I do a workout with you? And we ended up not even doing a workout. He ended up just basically ripping me up and down for my posture, my breathing technique, my recovery techniques, and it was so I said, you know what, you're crazy, but I'll try it.
Yeah.
And my health, my Achilles, all that stuff, like whoosh, better, almost immediately. Yeah. And so things like that, going to see people like that to get better.
So I think an area that could be seen as both for current NFL players, an opportunity to invest and grow as a professional in that duality moment, but also improve their performance on field with wearable technology and getting that data. Yeah. And I know that you sit on the board of sports advisors for Mc10, and they're in the marketplace with this bio stamp, but there are a lot of companies that's highly competitive trying to extract meaningful data. Is that something that you paid a lot of attention to last year or in your final years of playing?
I mean, I've always been sort of disappointed how technology has not progressed in football. Like it just hasn't.
Why not? Is it being pushed out?
Because it's just like people just do what they've always done. They do what they've always done.
Is there too big of a price tag?
No.
To get in, don't you have to pay to be in the NFL, right?
So there's some of that, but I mean, I'm even talking about your playbook. Like your playbook, I mean, I don't know what year it was for me in the NFL. It was 2000 and something. We were still getting our plays on an overhead projector. Yeah. And that was it. In black and white.
Of the coach, you think?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. That's what it is. Yeah. And so you got some of these older coaches that are really bright guys. They're some of the brightest in the world at what they do, but no one has really kept them up to date on technology. Like I literally had a conversation with a coach one time because we went from overhead projector to PowerPoint. And he was like, we don't need this fancy playbook. It was PowerPoint. Like my kids are using PowerPoint in 4th grade. So I'm like, what? And I'm on the treadmill next to this coach, just kind of doing a little warm up. And I make a joke about, oh, did you get that email about the new PowerPoint playbook?
Right.
And he literally says to me, he's like, oh, no, I know how to reply to an email, but I don't know how to start a new one. Yeah. And I'm like, wait a sec, what? Right. And now we're sort of wondering why our young, millennial first-round draft pick isn't relating to you. I'm like, we need continuing education in technology and or whatever it is. I mean, I've talked for years and years and years about the coach to quarterback communication system that works sometimes. You see these the coach calls the play into the quarterback. There's like a battery pack and a receiver and two really lame, awful speakers in your helmet in a loud stadium. You can't hear the play call very well. You hear the coach, it comes in like this, like, Matt, we're going to go zebra.
Right.
Trips right, zebra left, 2 jet X dagger, Y shallow cross fake 40, which is completely different. I said 2 jet X dagger, Y shallow cross fake 40, which is completely different than 3 jet X dagger, Y shallow cross fake 40. And like, it's these languages. It's red, left, swap, tight, close, Z right, sprint right, G, U, corner, halfback, flat. And like, you need to hear that clearly. Right. And people are like, oh, the back went the wrong way. Well, yeah, it's like the game of telephone. This is the NFL, a billion-dollar industry. You saw where Bill Belichick got all upset about the Microsoft Surface tablet not working very well. I have a Surface at home. I love my Surface. It's great. The Surface that we use on the sidelines, it's not a real Surface. It's like still shots.
It's created
it's
for
just
that
photos,
specific game.
And that's it. On a sunny day, the brightness doesn't go up high enough for you to even see the screen because you're outside in Jacksonville. There's no video. I think now it's high def, but it wasn't initially.
So technology needs to be disrupted in a major way.
It's got this like crazy OtterBox case type on it because the O-line coach is going to throw it down. But it's like, we can do better. We can do better. This is the NFL.
So there's technological intelligence, and then what I'm really excited about digging into with you is the emotional intelligence of an NFL quarterback. I don't think there are very few things in sports that are as dynamic as that relationship, as you mentioned, with your coach, being able to give counter feedback, and then also from year to year, taking snaps under a lineman that may be in his mid-20s that hangs out with a group of linemen, handing the ball off to a halfback who may be a rookie, a 21-year-old, and then like sort of balancing that relationship, because in sports, the chemistry of the team is pertinent to a winning record. And I think that in football, more than other sports, it's segmented to that relationship that the offense has versus the defense. And it's getting dark in here. Now it's pitch dark.
Party.
This is exactly.
It's okay. It sets the mood.
Well, so talk about emotional intelligence. Do you
I think age is overrated. I think age is overrated, and that's something that you find on any football team. So in our locker room, there's 53 guys on the active roster. Then you've got up to like 10 practice squad players. Then you've got guys that are on injured reserve. They can't, they've had surgery in season. So they're a part of your team. They're in the building, but they don't get to dress. They don't get to go to practice. They don't get to do any of that stuff. But you find that whether you're you grew up a rich kid in Greenwich, Connecticut, or a poor kid in Miami, Florida, like that doesn't matter about what kind of teammate you are, or what kind of friend you are, what kind of leader you can be on our team. And even the age thing. I mean, I've had teammates that were close to my age that, it was just an okay relationship. And I've had guys where I was the 41-year-old and they were the rookie, and we'll be lifelong friends. And we're
like you and Andrew Luck.
Andrew Luck, that's a good example. Like, he's closer in age to my kids than he is to me. And, we were quarterbacks together with the Indianapolis Colts, and we've got a great relationship. A great relationship. And we always will, I would imagine, unless I say something bad about him on ESPN and he gets mad at me, which is, that could happen too. But, he would come over to the house, my wife would be making dinner or whatever, and he'd say, oh, thanks, Mrs. Hasselbeck. And she'd give him this look like, don't you ever call me Mrs. Hasselbeck again. That's awful. Okay. Yeah. And then like, before you know it, we're having dinner, and then he's like helping the kids with their homework. Yeah. I'm like, so the adults are over here, I think they can handle it. Yeah. It's just long division. Yeah. But yeah, that happens in like the age thing.
That doesn't happen often though, where you have a 41-year-old quarterback.
No, but I even remember when Warren Moon was quarterbacking for the Kansas City Chiefs, they drafted Tony Gonzalez in the first round, and those guys were immediate roommates. So he was 41, and Tony Gonzalez was a rookie tight end. They were immediate roommates and lifelong friends. Even with coaches, like I've had some coaches that have been way, way older than me. Like their kids are my age, and they're like some of my best friends. And so like that, like you said, emotional intelligence.
Well, I think you're discounting your character value and your character traits.
For sure. That's right? Part of it.
So that's what I want to kind of get into is like, you mentioned, you're thinking of like 2 or 3 people that you can think of. I couldn't think of more than 2 or 3 people that have had a meaningful impact for as long as you have. It's not just about, hey, I'm a good person, I'm a good leader, and I'm going to relate to everyone. Like there's real investment that you're probably making, and it comes naturally because that's why you've been successful at it for so long.
I think that in football, in our locker rooms, if you have an unselfish attitude, that's attractive. If you're really, really, really good at your job, that's attractive. And if you're a hard worker, that's attractive. Yeah. And so those 3 things, like if you're good at all those things, you're unselfish, hard worker, and really good at your job, people are going to want to get to know you more, do what you do, hear from you. When there's a lull in a team setting, they want you to speak up. They want to hear from you.
So do you think that there's logic to being unselfish and hardworking, that will make you a better player than not?
It's hard because I've been around some guys that
hardworking and selfish.
Well, let me think of it the other way. I've known some guys that are great players. Yeah. Like they're on your fantasy team, but they were selfish and they weren't hard workers, and their teammates don't respect them. That's don't like them, don't really want to be their teammate. They're not even happy for them. Like a guy scores a touchdown, like they don't even clap. Yeah. You know, like, yeah, we scored. Oh well. You know, but like that, there's that. Yeah. Then on the flip side, there's guys that are unselfish, hardworking, but they can't get it done. Yeah. And if you can't get it done, like, hey man, I love you, but you know, my career is only a certain amount of time, and I'm in it to win, and like we can be friends, but you know. So if you get all 3 of those, I think that's pretty strong, pretty powerful.
Yep. So we rewind to a moment in your career where you've said it was one of the hardest moments, where you ended up leaving Seattle, but it was also the variable of it being NFL lockout time. And so how did you address going through turbulence in your career? And a lot of the listeners, and myself included as an interviewer, experience turbulence regularly in our careers, but those low moments are often the ones that put us into a state of self-realization, or a state of kind of a snowball effect when we roll down into treacherous territory. So kind of talk through what that experience was like, leaving a franchise that you wanted to stay with.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's always been ups and downs. I mean, even coming out of college, I wasn't invited to the combine. I wasn't had a pro day. Only one coach showed up, the Green Bay Packers quarterback coach, Andy Reid, and he showed up at Boston College, and it was snowing that day. So he's like, I guess we can't work out. It's snowing. And I'm like, oh, no, we can still work out. And he was like, oh, that was a test and you passed, so we're good. Like, you could play in Green Bay. I was like, but we never even threw. So I was shocked to get drafted. I was in grad school, and the draft happened in April, and I got drafted, and I'm like, these guys in the Packers, they're morons. Why would they draft me? I'm not good enough. You know, like how are they coming off of their second consecutive Super Bowl? Like, how are they successful with Brett Favre? Like, they can't evaluate quarterbacks. They picked me. You know, granted, it was pick 187. It was, you know, Peyton Manning.
Good film.
Peyton Manning, Ryan Leaf, 1-2, and then me at 187. So I even thought that was a wasted pick. So I get there and I'm like, well, hey, maybe I'll get to bring home the Packer shorts when this camp's over that they give you. You know, maybe I'll have to steal them if they don't. And but I'll show my grandkids. It'll be what a great story. I played for the Packers one time, you know, for a weekend at a mini camp. And I got there and I'm like, you know what? I might be able to do this. I might be able to make the team. Yeah. So I basically stopped grad school and went for it. Just did everything to make the Green Bay Packers. I still got cut. You know, Rick Meyer got cut from the Bears, and they were like, hey, they said, yeah, the day before, they're like, yeah, you made the team. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. This is a dream come true. No. And the next day, they're like, hey, Rick Meyer got cut from the Bears. I'm like, well, that stinks for him. Yeah. I'm like, well, we feel like it's an upgrade if we sign him over you. So I'm gone. So I played 17 games on the practice squad in Green Bay, playing scout team tight end, because there was no reason to have an extra quarterback, but they kind of needed a body to do tight end in practice. So I'm blocking Reggie.
That unselfishness.
Well, it was just like starving for a job, basically, you know? And so I'm blocking Reggie White every day, you know, my first year. playing scout team tight end. I hadn't played tight end since I was 12. And
your dad played tight end.
My dad played tight end, so I at least knew how to get into a 3-point stance, and I knew what a swim move was. But and I knew how to hold. I saw him do that. So then the next year I'm the backup quarterback for the Packers. Yeah. And so I was at a low, and then a high, then a low, and then so anyway, 3 years in Green Bay. Then I go to Seattle. I'm traded there to be their starter. Well, it wasn't like, all roses right away. I get there and I get benched immediately. They make my backup Trent Dilfer the starter. He had just won the Super Bowl in Baltimore. I got booed out of town, like literally. Yeah. Mike Holmgren said to me, "Hey, listen, I'm not usually wrong, but about quarterbacks, but I guess I was wrong. It's hard to admit, but I thought you could play. You can't." And then, unfortunately for Trent Dilfer, he tears his Achilles the next year in the game where Emmitt Smith breaks the rushing title, and I got to come in and basically help us win the game. And I never give the job back up. So, it was ups and downs. And in Seattle for a long time, it just wasn't going to work. And so I ended up being there for 10 years, mostly great years. 2008, I got hurt. Wasn't a great year. 2009, it was a tough year. But 2010 was a great year. We kind of ended on a high note at home against the world championship defending champs, the New Orleans Saints. Everyone kind of knows it as the beast mode run game, where Marshawn Lynch had that amazing run. But then we don't play well enough the following week in the playoffs, and we're out. And so that season, the lockout's coming. Pete Carroll's a first-year head coach. I'm thinking, hey, this thing's back. We've turned this ship around here. We worked hard to get it back to this point, and now we're on our way. And like you said, I didn't come back. They basically moved on from me after the lockout. But looking back, there were so many good things, think I almost wasn't even invited to this party, basically. And now I got to experience it. The journey was amazing. Were there some things that we wish would have gone better? Sure. But
what's the typical pattern of going from having a deal to entering your free agency year and beginning those discussions?
So typically your starting quarterback never gets to free agency.
Because you just get re-signed.
You get re-signed. You don't hit the market. And now you see with the franchise tag, guys like Kirk Cousins will get like a, hey, prove it deal. Like, hey, you played great 7 games. I want to see you play great for 16.
Yeah.
And, and so like he went out and he kind of proved it this year. Yeah. And now they're negotiating again, and now they're looking at the price, and they're probably like, can you prove it again? You know, and they'll tag him again.
Yeah. And that tag is?
It's the average of the top 5 salaries of the players of your position that year. So some guys think it's the greatest thing ever.
And it's a 12-month stick, so it's 1 year, right?
It's 1 year, but it's not long-term security. So if you blow out your knee and can never play again, it's not a long-term deal.
Is it guaranteed cash?
In that one case, yes. There's in the NFL, you sign a 4-year contract.
Nice pop if you're a quarterback, it is the average of the top 5.
It is, but if you sign a 4-year deal, you get a prorated signing bonus over 4 years, and the signing bonus is the portion that's guaranteed.
Yep.
So, like, if you sign a 5-year contract as an NFL football player, and after the first year they decide, you know what, you're really not that good, they can tear up the contract, and they owe you nothing years 2 through 5.
Yep.
So it's essentially 5 1-year deals in a sense.
So you got to that franchise moment and the conversation.
So I got to that moment and basically, hey, we're going to sign you back. The lockout happened. A lot of time elapsed. The quarterback coach left. The offense coordinator left. The offensive line coach left. Like there was a lot of transition.
Yeah.
And I think the Seahawks probably just looked at it and they said, hey, you have a young team. We've got a young offensive line. We're trying to build something. At some point, we got to break off this relationship. Yeah. Like, you're not going to play forever. I think I was 35 years old. Yeah. That time, no one really played past 35. And basically, I got a call at the end of the lockout from Pete Carroll and John Schneider, the GM. And they said, hey, listen, there's no easy way to say this, but we're basically just, we're going to break up with you.
Yeah.
It's been a great run. Appreciated you. What you've meant to the foundation that we're trying to build here, but we're moving on. And it was surprising. It was shocking a little bit, but at the same time, I understood. I understood, hey, I am 35 and, I broke my wrist the year before. I was kind of in bad shape. I didn't like.
Do you guys ever try to counter, like in business?
You counter an offer. So like if they make you like an offer, then you counter. Yeah. And I think even before the lockout, like they kind of made an offer, but like again, it's like it's not even about the number, it's about the structure. And so like there's some contracts that can work against you in a huge way. Like so what? like a playtime incentive. So I've been on teams where a guy will say, like, okay, hey, here's your salary. But here's your salary if you play 16 games. But what happens is a lot of times is that they say, well, we're not going to play him.
Yep.
So we don't have to pay him. And
especially if like the season's over, you're not going to make the playoffs. There's 4 or 5 games left, then they certainly won't play you, right? So they don't hit that play.
So
time.
Late in my career, I was playing on a team, and there was a guy. I think he needed 4 tackles to hit a bonus in his contract. It was like $250,000. They dressed him and wouldn't let him on the field. And it was just like this. And meanwhile, it's week 17. We're trying to win a game.
Yeah.
I'm the starting quarterback trying to win a game.
Yeah.
I need my guy on defense out there.
Do you think there is, because I've heard a lot about that and seen it and read it, that the performance bonuses and player contracts,
they're dangerous.
We have a little bit of them in professional lacrosse, but how does that affect the chemistry of a team? Because that you're ultimately, right, one of the sports cliches that we often talk about is, putting team first.
Yeah.
And how easy it is to say that, but being selfish and developing yourself as a player, and monitoring your statistics and setting benchmarks for yourself and saying like, hey, this is the way that I'm going to improve because this is a long game. I'm going to play for 15 years, but also having team first ahead of that. It's just an interesting dichotomy. If you throw in cash incentives, I mean,
it becomes there's also a business of football that's going on. That's why I've always felt a lot more comfortable with team goals in any contract incentive situation, because now we're all in it together.
Is the best way to talk about it just disclosing it? Do you find if like this linebacker's like, hey guys, listen, I just want to get it out there so no one's uncomfortable with it. I'm 4 tackles away from a $250,000 bonus. That's all I'll say about it, but I just don't want any secrecy or any rumors starting.
It just happens. It just happens. Like you saw this past year with the Buffalo Bills. Yeah. The Buffalo Bills, their starting quarterback, Tyrod Taylor, is due a bunch of money if he gets hurt, basically. And so week 17, last game of the season, they just didn't play him. They just didn't play him.
Yeah.
And they just said, hey, it's just a financial decision. So they weren't putting their best players out there to win the game. They just made a financial decision. And then ironically, 2 days after the season, he goes and sees a doctor for an abdominal pain that he's been having, and he has surgery. Yeah. And now he's got to pass a physical come later, I think it's March or April, or they owe him a ton of money.
Yeah.
I forget exactly. I think it's like $17 million or something absurd. So it's like they made a business decision and then he made a business decision. So I think in the concept of a team, in the context of a team, you really want to just all be having the same exact goals as much as possible.
Yeah. And that's where leadership comes in.
Yeah, and so when you're structuring a contract, sometimes you'll see a guy like, oh, he turned down this. It's like, well, what exactly? Yeah. But that's stuff that is high level stuff. And as players come in from college or wherever, you also, I guess, have to realize, hey, listen, my boss and my boss's boss, they have a job.
Yeah.
They're trying to do things that I've never thought of: sell sponsorships, sell out the stadium, be a great ambassador in the community. Like there's all this other stuff. It's not just about winning or losing games.
Yeah. Is that where you think a lot of value comes in for agents outside of the professionalism and the negotiation skills they have, the marketing wherewithal, but like being that, they often call it like good cop, bad cop, or that middleman between the player and the president of the team, having to negotiate or fight on behalf of the player for that incentive or something like that?
It's particularly tough when your coach is also the guy involved in negotiations.
Does that happen a lot?
Yeah. Sometimes the guy's like GM and head coach, or he's just a huge head coach. And, he's like, hey, do you want to be here? Yes, coach, I want to be here.
Yeah.
Hey, do you believe in what we're doing? Yes, coach, I do.
Right.
But then at the same time.
And these are the same PowerPoint guys that are like.
No, these are the good guys. I mean, these guys are sharper than that. I mean, they have people that probably set up their iPhone for them, but sure, they're good at what they do.
Yeah.
But they also they're also negotiating. So they may think that you're worth I don't want to use a player necessarily, but I'll go ahead and use it. So I remember when I was negotiating a contract one time, the contract, you don't typically talk in numbers. You talk in people. It's like selling a house. Like you're looking about comps.
Yeah.
Like, hey, my house is on 41 Main Street. I know what 39 Main Street just sold for. So
got it.
This is a comp. So like for me one year, Chad Pennington had a deal, and it was young in my career. And I thought, hey, that Chad Pennington deal is a fair deal. I think that's a fair comparable.
Sure.
I'm not going after Peyton Manning money. I'm not going after Brett Favre money. I'm not going after Michael Vick money.
I like that.
But like Chad Pennington.
Yeah.
And they came back, and it was my head coach. It was Mike Holmgren. He's like, oh, no, you're not Chad Pennington, meaning the contract.
Right.
And he was like, oh, you're this guy. And it was a quarterback that I was like, oh, my gosh, I hope you did not just say that.
Right.
I am so offended.
Yeah.
But it was nice.
Are you having that conversation, or is the agent?
My agent is having that conversation, and I feel like I was mature enough to hear it. But I know there's guys that get really hurt by it. Like, what are you saying? Like, I trusted you. You were my coach. You were my friend. You were like my teammate, basically. Like, and you think I'm not Chad Pennington?
Don't you think it's a great opportunity, though, to get players to like start experiencing more healthy, uncomfortable conversation like they're going to have inevitably in the business world? We're like, yeah, those conversations suck.
No doubt.
But you need to separate what we often talk about and hear culturally, personal and business.
Mm-hmm. And thick skin.
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of it too. And there's
a lot of thin skin in sports.
For sure. And ironically, because you're talking about quarterbacks, kickers, guys who should have ice in their veins, yet, some bad words of, no affirmation, and they lose their minds. But I experienced it a little bit because my agent was this guy, Andrew Brandt, coming out of Boston College. I signed with this guy, Andrew Brandt. He became the CFO of the Green Bay Packers while I was on the Packers. So then all of a sudden I had no agent, and I had a 1-year deal off the practice squad, and I needed to do a deal. Well, he can't represent me. He's now working sort of against me. So they had me so I did my own deal with another guy. What was that
conversation that he had with you? Was he like, hey, listen, Matt.
So he basically said,
I can no longer represent you because I'm going to actually.
He said, hey, would you take a job in Green Bay if you were me? And I'm like, heck yeah, man. Yeah. Like, this place is awesome. I love it here. And so he did, but then I had to negotiate this thing. And it was just an eye-opening experience to have no agent, kind of like you were saying. Yeah. But I think as a player, you got to realize that it is just negotiating.
Yeah.
Like, they don't think, like in my case, they weren't saying, oh my gosh, we wish we had Chad Pennington instead of you. Like, they weren't saying that.
That's right.
They were just trying not to pay Chad Pennington prices.
Yeah.
At that time, he was making a lot of money.
Yeah.
And I'm sure after me, there was some quarterback that came after me, and they were like, we see you as Hasselbeck. And he'd be like, what? Hasselbeck? No, he's terrible.
Did you get the Chad Pennington money?
I did a little better than that, actually.
You did better.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Well, but it was tough. It was tough, and I had to earn it.
Good agent.
Great agent, and it was a 6-year deal. And so 6-year deals never get played out. You never get 6 years of your 6-year deal. There's all these like puffed up numbers at the end of your deal, year 5, year 6, where they're going to cut you or renegotiate anyway. And but the agents typically
they like opt-outs and stuff.
They can opt out whenever the heck they want, at the end of the season. Yeah, but the agent feels good because he throws this big number up there. Oh, 6 years, such and such $1 million.
And they sign more players.
They help in the recruiting the college kids.
Well, they also bring in the marketing side. And so I wanted to ask you specifically about a big non-industry partner that we've seen. I've always been a big fan of the Campbell Soup commercials.
Yeah, there you go.
So you have the endemic category, which everyone gets plugged into pretty immediately through their agency group, and then you have the non-endemics, and that's a big category. Mm-hmm. So how did that deal come to you? So
I think we had just played in the Super Bowl, I believe, and it was going to be myself and Ben Roethlisberger, his mom and him, and my mom and me, and he had actually gotten in a motorcycle accident that off season and wasn't able to do it. So they hired the Steel Curtain to basically be the other side of our commercial. But the guy who handles all my marketing, this guy John Drawn out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, met him through Brett Favre. He had put together the first ever Campbell's Chunky Soup deal with Reggie White in Wisconsin. Yep. And I don't know the details of how he did it, but he did it and had this kind of relationship, and maybe ran into somebody at the Super Bowl in Detroit or something and put the deal together. But the deal lasted, I forget if it was a year or 2 years. I think it was maybe 2 years. But we actually got fired because
mean you and your mom.
Me and my mom, and I was devastated, and she was so excited. And I'll tell you
about getting let go.
Yeah, I'll tell you why though. So the first year was us in the steel curtain. It was a lot of fun.
Right.
Besides the fact that I had to film it at Heinz Field right after I just lost the Super Bowl to the Steelers and then spend a week in Pittsburgh. That was a little insult to injury. Right. But the next year we filmed in Toronto for a week, and it was all these different guys, LaDainian Tomlinson and Todd Heap and a bunch of great guys, and we had a lot of fun. But then the next year my mom and I got fired, and basically through their market research, their, focus groups or whatever, they saw the picture of me and my mom and they thought, well, she's way too young to be his mom, and he looks way too old to be her son. So basically they were like, your mom's too hot and you're too old and bald and pasty looking. It was like, I was like, what? Never mind the money that we lost. But my mom was like, well, that's such a nice thing to say. Right. I'm like, no, Mom, we lost. We just got fired. It's terrible. But it's true. My mom's a beautiful woman, and she's like 60, I think. So I'm 41.
God bless.
So it's Yeah.
Any other big deals that you had experience with as kind of virtue of being the Twitter guru or building your social platform?
Well, that's one thing I realized early on, is that people wanted to spend money in that social media space and they didn't know how to spend it well.
Yeah.
Like there were some things that people paid me.
They're still trying to figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great point. And there were some things that people paid me to like tweet, post, whatever, share. And I thought, this is like dumb. Like I could do better than, like my ideas on how to post and share, more authentic and, just real. Like it would have been so much better, but okay, I'll do it your way, whatever. And then other things that I'd never thought of, and I thought it was awesome. I'll give you one example. The NHL came to a group of us one year and said, hey, will you live tweet the NHL All-Star game? I'm like, sure. I wasn't going to watch it, because it's a nice day.
Yeah.
So I watch it, love it.
Yeah.
Best All-Star game I've ever seen. Like their formats are great. It's
great.
Awesome. Now I'm live tweeting it. Then I'm interacting with fans. I had to do like a certain amount of tweets per, say it was like 3 tweets per period or whatever. I'm rattling off like 25. Right. It was the greatest. I learned a lot of stuff about hockey. I got all of my fans, all my friends from Canada tweeting at me. All of a sudden I get Canada fans. Oh, dude, I kind of like you guys now. I love you like hockey. Right. And it was great. And I think I've been a hockey fan ever since. And I remember distinctly when I was doing it, because I'd send like a tweet about it and I'd see like Drew Brees send a tweet about it. I'm like, oh, they got you too, But it was one of the better ones that I've been a part of. And, and live tweeting is just kind of a fun. Live tweeting sports events is kind of an exciting thing.
Authenticity, you said that, and that's always come off that way to me, is you being super authentic. Are there ways that you train yourself to be mindful regularly? Do you meditate? Do you ever do visualization before games?
Yeah, so I read this thing. It's called Our Daily Bread every day. It's actually kind of part of a game. It's you could find one in any Christian church in America, probably in the world. It's just like this old. It's an app actually on my phone. It's on my home screen actually. Yeah.
Dude, come on.
Well, we never got to it. Okay. But like we would play a game in our locker rooms where you had to read the story by the team meeting, which is usually like 8:30 in the morning. So you have other meetings, treatment, whatever. But by 8:30, you have had to have read the story, and there'd be like a moral of the story, maybe a little Bible verse, but like definitely something historical to it. And you play the game. Like say today's was about hey, it's important to like give somebody a compliment today.
Right.
Like, it's a nice thing to do, whatever. And let's just say, I'm over here and I'm like, hey, wow, hey, that's a great looking shirt on you. Like, and he read also, and he's like, oh, well, I like your shirt better.
Right.
Like, you might sit there and be like, you guys, what are you talking? Like, why are you talking like that? Like, oh, that's $1. You would owe $1 to the pot.
Oh, if you challenged it.
No, so like if you didn't read. So like we don't say, I don't come up to you and say, hey, Paul, did you read?
Got it.
Just kind of like pick it up.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And then everyone's just flinging compliments.
Or it could be like, oh, hey, did you hear what happened in 1492? Like, yeah, I did. That was crazy. That was heroic, though. Like, oh, what happened in 1492? What are you guys talking about? Like, that's $1. Yeah. And so I would have a shoebox in my locker, and the whole team would start like reading these Our Daily Bread stories. Great. And at the end of the year, that money would go to a random person at a bus stop. And the most fun, it wasn't like that much money, but it was a lot of money to get at a bus stop. It might be like
no doubt
somewhere between like $400, $500, $600, and you stop at a bus stop and you're like, hey, we play this game. It's called the Our Daily Bread game, and I don't know. Here's your lucky day. I don't know what to tell you. You know,
I'm done. I'm implementing that into this season. That's
it's
amazing.
so good. But it's like for me with teammates, it's kind of like a nice start to every single day. And so used to be like, I'm old enough, you had to read the story. I get in my car and it just goes on Bluetooth right away.
Yeah.
But we get a lot of coaches that did it also. So when I was at the Indianapolis Colts, our head coach was Chuck Pagano. It's tough being a head coach, I'm sure. You got to come up with like what you're going to say to the team, like twice a day, every day, motivate them, blah, blah, blah. And he'll get up sometimes and he'll be like, you guys, I'm going to tell you a story. There was a boy once. He was 8 years old. I'm like, we start looking around the room, like those of us who are reading the story, we're like, Our Daily Bread?
Yeah.
Like, and do you know what that little boy's name was? And I'll be like, was it John Wooden, coach? You're like, yes, it was John Wooden. It's just fascinating. So
Yeah.
You got to get material as a coach, but that's a good one.
It's mindfulness.
That's for sure. I don't know if I could survive without it.
Yeah. Well, you embarked on the probably the most important part of any athlete's career, particularly one who's been successful and has played as long as you have in retirement just this past year. So what was that like for you in making that decision, and how was it like post-retirement? Yeah,
I wasn't planning on retiring. I was actually March 2nd, it was free agency, and I was looking at the teams. I wasn't going back to the Colts. They were signing Andrew Luck and had to, cut costs basically everywhere for the $100 million man, and he's worth it. He's a great player. But I was looking around, unfortunately, for other teams to go to and had some options, and they weren't awesome family options. I got a daughter who's starting 9th grade, and I'd been playing for so long, and I always thought, just play as long as you can, kind of. Yeah. And, out of nowhere, the opportunity came to maybe join ESPN and retire. They were shaking up their Monday Night Football pregame and their Sunday Countdown, the morning show with Chris Berman, a show that I, grew up watching. And to go play a year somewhere else, or maybe 2 even somewhere else, or jump into this new, very challenging kind of situation. I talked it over with my wife and my kids, and they were like, no, you got to play. And then I kind of said, okay, well, what if you look at it over 4 years? So I signed a 4-year deal at ESPN, basically said, okay, would you rather this for 4 years, or would you rather go move to, this NFL city, whatever city, pick a team, for 2 years, Washington. And then basically have to go do this again in 2 years. Yeah. And so when we looked at it that way, through the lens of, okay, to my girls, hey, do you want to go to high school in one spot, or do you want to do 2 years and then we move again? Yep. And so it was kind of a family decision, with also a chance to go be on ESPN, a channel that is always on at our house. Yeah. And if it's not, it's, their Snapchat story or whatever. Like, that's where we get a lot of our news. Yeah. And I remember my first day at ESPN with Chris Berman. Chris Berman's like, hey, to our team, he's like, listen, we'll get a little better at our show once we get to know each other. And I kind of looked at Randy Moss, and he looked at me, and one of us said to Chris Berman, we're like, dude, we know you. We watch you every single week our whole lives. Yeah. You might have to get to know us. Yeah. But, I know we can finish your sentences. Yeah. So this is kind of a dream come true to be part of that. And my brother works at ESPN also. And so in the off season, I work 8 shows with him. And, we have the same parents and the same everything. But we also are good at arguing, I guess. We could argue about anything. Yeah. And so I think it'd be fun TV, and he lived in New York City for 10 years. So he's got this harsh edge to him where he can be he'll come after me, go on the offensive.
He's a New Yorker.
He's not, but he's a Red Sox fan, but he could, it's something. There's something there. I think it'd be good for TV though. Do you try to parse out pros and cons for big decisions and small decisions, or just? Yeah. I think for me though too, I also don't worry too much. I remember when I was picking what college to go to, I had actually committed to UCLA, and I went to school in Boston, high school, and Tom Coughlin was the coach at Boston College at the time, and he talked me into going to BC. And I had to get out of this UCLA commitment. Was it a signed commitment or verbal? No, it's just kind of a verbal. And actually, the coach didn't accept it. He was like, listen, I don't feel comfortable doing this without your mom and dad. So let me fly back to Boston. Let's do this officially with your parents. I'm like, okay, fine. Yeah. But I remember being so stressed out about it as a junior or senior in high school. And I remember seeing my freshman year football coach, and I said, he's like, "What's wrong?" I'm like, "Oh, I just feel like this decision is going to change the trajectory of my life. Like, this is the biggest decision I've ever made. Like, do I go to UCLA or do I go to Boston College?" And he's like, that doesn't matter. It almost doesn't matter.
Right.
I'm like, "What are you talking about? It doesn't matter." He's like, those decisions aren't going to decide whether you're successful in life. Here's what's going to decide if you're successful. Like, are you choosing to do drugs? Are you choosing to cheat? Are you choosing to, go out and get wasted? Are you trying, like, what, or like, are you going to choose to not do those things? Hey, I'm going to be a person of integrity. Am I going to get an honest A- instead of a deceitful A? Like those types of things. It doesn't matter if you do that at UCLA, Boston College, Notre Dame, like wherever. And I think for me at that moment, it was freeing. And so when I've had the chance to like maybe be a free agent and sign with another team or even retire, it was almost like it doesn't matter if I'm playing football, talking about football, or whatever I'm doing. Yeah. Like I'm a bus driver.
That's a great mindset. I love
which
that.
was freeing for me. It felt like, you know what? Don't worry about that.
It's sort of like being present. It goes back to that mindfulness exercise that you do every day.
Yeah.
So I want to finish with our highlight reel. I think I've just like called it a highlight reel because I don't want to call it rapid fire, but we just try and run through a series of like quick questions and answers, and then we'll close this. It was really awesome having you. I learned a lot.
Good.
About you as a person.
Good. I'm learning too. It's like a therapy session.
Okay. So I actually didn't even look at the style of phones. This is a good one. iOS or Android?
iOS.
How many hours of sleep per night?
7.3.
Breakfast, lunch, or dinner?
Love them all.
All of them?
Love them. Breakfast is so good though.
Do you prefer to read or listen?
Listen while I drive.
There you go. So audio, you a podcaster?
It can be, yeah.
We're getting a subscriber out of you. I know that.
I'm in. Bam.
Right. Hydrate or caffeinate?
Double hydrate so you can double caffeinate.
Okay. Block or tackle?
Block or tackle? Well, if you're tackling,
you play tight end.
but that means you threw an interception. But unfortunately, that's the best time to make a tackle when you're really upset.
Yeah. Your final meal will be?
My final meal?
Last meal, if you got a chance to.
Dessert, baby.
Dessert. One thing that you cannot go without?
My wife.
There you go. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, man. It was a blast.
Good time.
We'll see you soon.
I will subscribe.
Yeah. The next sports advisory board meeting for MC10 in a couple of years.
There you go. I'm in. Count me in. Thanks, Paul.
Here's a shout out to Matt Hasselbeck. Really, really enjoyed your time, buddy. And thanks for tuning in to this edition of Suiting Up with Paul Rabil. I want to say thank you to our sponsor and ask that you please support them the way that they support this show. Also, make sure to subscribe to Suiting Up with Paul Rabil, either on Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to your pods. I'll catch you next time.